Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, February 24th, 2023. I'm your host, Tristan. Apologizing for the week off I had to take last week. Somebody got sick, and I had to take care of them. As it goes. Hello, Internet. How's everybody doing today? I am okay. I am very tired, but I am caffeinated, so it evens out. This is the Discourse. This is a stream I do every Friday at noon. I'm Tristan, the host of Step Back, which you can find at stepbackhistory.com if you're not watching it right on that channel right now. And also the co-host of It's Probably Not Aliens, which you can find at probsnotaliens.com. My work can be supported by signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/stepback or at patreon.com/stepbackhistory. Or by, Twitch Prime, Super Chats, bits, subscriptions. All are not necessary, but are definitely welcome. Again, hope he's doing all right. Yeah, he's fine. It's just that when you start daycare, you get sick a lot, is all. But it seems to be evening out. He seems to be in a better mood now. Those are all the things you can support my work at, I guess. Try to think of that, like, anything. If you support through Nebula, you get access to all of Nebula, too. And as long as you are a member of Nebula, a portion of the membership fee that you pay goes to me directly, but you are supporting creators by watching their content on there. It's great stuff. Or Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. I feel like it doesn't need a hard sell at this point. It supports my work. You get videos early. You get them ad-free. I do a Q&A. Yeah. Must be super stressful having a small child in a pandemic. To an extent. I think it would have been more stressful if it had been a few years back. The pandemic is still ongoing, but it's definitely in a very different place than it was, like, in 2020. I was never in a situation in which, like, we had, like, lockdowns where he was sent home from daycare or from school for several months to years, in which I had to figure out how to work through that. But things are working well. Also, COVID as a disease is less intense on young children than it is on adults. And kind of in a bad and good way is that the entire house got COVID when he was like 2 months old. So, it kind of like soon enough in, the Band-Aid got ripped off and it moved through the house, and we haven't had reinfection since, and we're all vaccinated now. The only time that it was a little scary was there was a period where it wasn't until he was under 6 months old, and we were waiting until 6 months to get him the COVID vaccine for children. But he's got it now. He's got his shot and he's boosted, so yeah. Luckily, we are in a decent spot, and it does seem like, I don't know. It's hesitant to say that the pandemic is behind us, because it's definitely not. It is definitely, though, I feel like it would be irresponsible, though, to say that it hasn't shifted into a very different form than it was even a year ago. And that we are watching in real time a disease become endemic. And at that point, we kind of have to adjust to whatever life looks like at that point, right? Just keep getting your vaccines about every 6 months, getting your boosters every few months, and we'll have to work through the consequences of the pandemic as it comes. But yeah. You're on drugs that legal. Yeah. that is the problem, is that what to do about the people who have immunocompromised positions, because it's obvious the virus isn't going anywhere. The whole dream of there being a situation where there's zero COVID it's impossible. And so at that point, how do we help the immunocompromised? And that is, I don't know. So we'll see what happens. It's not an enviable situation, that's for sure. Yeah, if it hadn't have been for the desire for GDP and numbers to keep going up, we could have just done a 2-week lockdown with, like, well supported, like a 2-week lockdown where the government provided people with food and the essentials of life, and basically just said, everybody, we will pay you to stay home for 2 weeks. We could have had the pandemic handled in a couple months. But instead, we had to really keep the number going up, and it resulted in a whole lot of people dying, millions of people dying. But yeah, I would say now that, and also I will very sheepishly say then at this point though. Given how the situation is, we are post-pandemic. Not that the pandemic is over, because the pandemic is not over. It's still a declared pandemic. It's just that we're kind of we are post we are past the defeating it and into the learning to live with it. And I don't know what the situation for that is. I have been told that apparently. I've been told that the World Health Organization is looking at the numbers, is predicting that the pandemic emergency is going to be declared over this year, given the declining fatality rates of the disease and the sort of declining infection levels around the world. But yeah. Because at this point, it's just it's another flu virus, right? We have an influenza epidemic every single year, and it's going to be downgraded to that. It's just going to be a thing that pops up every now and again, or seasonally, if you will. And there's no undoing that, unless we were to discover a universal COVID vaccine. But at that point, we're not at that point. But the main thing is that the idea of the endemic disease is that that COVID will become over enough time as it passes through the population. So it's a little bit about virus evolution, is that viruses actually are rather disincentivized from killing their hosts. That's why a lot of the deadliest epidemics and pandemics are the result of a zoonotic transfer, basically a virus finding its way from an animal into a human. And because it's not accustomed to our biology, and because our biology is not immune to, or has not developed an immune response to it, basically the battle is very one-sided, and people get very sick and die. And that over time, most of these viruses, because of the selection pressure, killing your host is not the way to do it. The most successful viruses are the ones that have the mildest possible symptoms, because then you feel better, because then you don't separate yourself and you don't die, so you infect more people, and those genes propagate further. That's why every new variant becomes more... Seems to, in general, obviously this is a trend, not a rule for every single variant, but every major variant becomes more contagious but less deadly. And honestly, given the situation we are in with the disease right now, that's basically the best thing that we can hope for is that we will do this. Is that as it mutates and mutates, that it'll become less and less deadly as it gets used to our immune system. So, not exactly, but I'm not an epidemiologist, obviously, but that's the current situation of it as I understand it. I haven't even finished the intro spiel yet. My latest video is called There Has Always Been Trans People. I highly recommend you check it out. My next video, which should be coming out... Technically, today was supposed to be its release date, but I am not finished yet. So I'm hoping to get it out on Monday now. But it is a video on Ancient Apocalypse. It's my response to Ancient Apocalypse. So hopefully, inshallah, Monday you will see a copy of that video come out for people. After the stream is over, I'm going to go and edit it for a long time. And then after that, for patrons and people on Nebula, there should be pretty quickly after that my video on the Iraq War, which is featuring a interview with Noam Chomsky, which I'm pretty excited about. So that video will be coming out as soon as I can get this video done. I'm going to start working on that one full time, so that it can come out for everybody, for patrons and Nebula subscribers ASAP, and then for everybody else it'll be coming out on the 20th of March. That's the hope. And then as that happens, I'll get to work on a video for the end of March. And then that one will be coming out at the end of April, which at the moment is a video on cultural Marxism. The concept of cultural Marxism, I should say. The conspiracy theory of cultural Marxism. That's the idea. It also means that it's probably time for another poll on Patreon about what I should do my topic on next. I really want to make a video on political... What's it called? Yeah, on Nebula right now, you can watch my full interview with Noam Chomsky, which I think was really good. Yeah. The next thing I have is... But yeah, I'm going to do a poll for for whatever that video would be coming out in April for... after I finish, the Cultural Marxism video will come out at the end of March for Nebula Patreon and come out at the end of April for everybody else. And then I got to think about what video to make for the end of April / the end of May for everybody else. And my idea for that right now is I want to do something on artificial intelligence. Specifically a sort of material, two-pronged approach on that video. I want to do one about, I want to talk about historical materialism and using that to understand what we are looking at when we talk about this sort of AI revolution that's happening in computer science right now. And second, to philosophically talk about some of the ways in which people, specifically that I think have been acting in a kind of reactionary fashion, talking about it. Because for some reason, especially, and it's weird because it's happening on leftist spaces, a sort of reactionary backlash against this developing technology in a way that is spreading a lot of misinformation about how it works and the mathematics behind it and all that kind of stuff. And I can understand part of it because it represents a lot of disruption and threat to a lot of industries. But what I'll hopefully try to argue is that is the fault of the way that our economic structure focuses around it, and it's just another example of the contradiction within capitalism. But because there is a sort of reactionary backlash to the technology that I think is, while it's not completely unwarranted, it is typically coming from a misinformed place, and I want to talk about that because, yeah, I'm not. Yeah. All right. There we go. I'm sure that will not be. I'm sure it will get me in a lot of trouble because it's me talking about technology. That's the other part. Is I'm always like I'm blown away by the idea of leftists being like against the idea of technological development, as if like Marx didn't talk heavily about how the advancing of our material conditions being the sort of engine that actually drives us towards a sort of communist society. But okay, that I'll save it for the video. I'll save it for May, or April, I guess. And I do have a friend who lives not too far away who is like literally doing a master's degree in artificial intelligence and ethics, which I think will be pretty good. I don't know if you feel this way, but I'm a little tired of people wanting to talk about machines becoming sentient or whatever. It feels like a common distraction from the real issues. It's definitely, I feel like it's anthropomorphizing what the technology actually is going to be. And what sentience actually means. But I do think it shows an incompleteness in our language. That's the main thing, is that I think that it all right, how do I like the idea of like machines becoming sentient is, or talking about it in that kind of language is misleading. It doesn't really what it does is it shows that we have a hole in what our understanding of sentience is, and that we don't really have a good answer to what's called the hard question of consciousness. And that is an interesting question. Like I feel like there's a lot of space in which this technology is opening up a lot of holes in the way that we conceive of what thinking is, what learning is, what constitutes learning, what constitutes inspiration, what constitutes like theft versus non-theft, and like all sorts of just wild stuff that I think is just like linguistically lacking, because there's I'll have to chew into it later, obviously, because this is only a half-baked philosophy or theory about what this video would be about. I'd obviously have to do more deep digging, but I do have, because my PhD research involved doing some machine learning, and I know enough about basic linear algebra to have an idea of how things like stable diffusion or whatever work. That is, or even ChatGPT. Like I have enough of a knowledge about the math that drives those algorithms that shows very quickly that the way that we're talking about it, especially on leftist spaces, is very misinformed. And in some ways it will detract from meaningful ways to actually, try to build a regulatory system around these technologies so that they can serve humanity in a way that could be really, really profound and could end up with a lot of things. Like, for example, there is, like, I guess, like, the big one I could talk about is that there's the big serious issue about especially machines' capabilities of making pictures, and how that impacts with art and ownership. And that, I think, is a very interesting conversation to have, because the way that it's talked about is that this is theft. This is just this isn't art. This isn't like this is just copying people. It's just tracing. They're very much talking as if like they made a machine that just copies and pastes people's pictures into other things, and it's like, no, that's not how the technology works. Now there is, because like the main ethical issue there is that there are these that the machine learning requires training sets, which is sets of data that show it how to build things in a certain way. And the way that it worked, the way that they built a lot of these, is by doing mass scrapes of publicly available pictures on the internet. If it was at the point where it was, still being like researched, yeah, whatever, it's research. But now that it's starting to become commercial and monetized, you are in some ways training an algorithm to do stuff off of the work of people who are then not being credited or compensated. And that is part of the sort of hole in the regulatory regime that is important to address, because in some ways, because like there's the ways you could talk about it. There's the way that over anthropomorphizes the algorithm, which is saying that if a human learns how to draw by like studying other people's works, and then would they get accused of like plagiarizing other people's art if by doing that they developed a style that was based on the people that they were inspired by? That over anthropomorphizes the algorithm, but it has an element of truth in that it's not just like copying and pasting pictures. What it is doing is it is using the pictures to basically create a multi-dimensional vector in vector space that then can be mapped against other vectors in vector space to sort of build clouds about what kinds of types of colors and squares belong to other kinds of squares. And that is like sort of the basis of machine learning in a lot of ways, and it's not the same. It's not the same, but at the same time, it is also a machine that is this is why the part is so hard to linguistically talk about, because we haven't really had because machine learning is such a like new-ish technology, well, it's not new, but it has only very recently become powerful enough to really do interesting things with. So we're at this point where it's funny, because it was actually it was really what's it called? It was really trending up about maybe 10, 15 years ago. And then a bunch of people got really obsessed with cryptocurrency. And the thing about machine learning, because the big breakthrough in machine learning technology, if you remember from a while back when they had that Google Dream thing that happened, where they showed all of that kind of strange hallucinatory picture from this is probably 10, 15 years ago now. They were developing that, and the main thing that made it interesting was that because machine learning technology is very, very CPU heavy in order to do. And there's two developments that kind of went through that made it work, which is one, they made a discovery that GPU processors are actually really good at doing machine learning technology. GPUs being the processors in video cards. And the second is the invention of a part of the machine learning algorithm called transformers. The T in GPT stands for transformer, which was a way to do machine learning without, in a sort of quicker and more efficient fashion that required less cycles in order to do. So, but the thing is that as the sort of scale of these technologies started to increase, they did become more and more dependent on heavy use of computer hardware. And then fucking cryptocurrency happened, and cryptocurrency put a bunch of minds becoming obsessed with developing, with using computing power to answer fake math equations to build fake money, which set back machine learning research because all of a sudden the parts you needed to do serious machine learning research became very expensive. And not to mention all of the CEOs and sort of tech business people who invest money into developing computer science technologies were more interested in like really stupid blockchain NFT shit than they were in like developing this machine learning technology that had a lot of promise. And so it kind of sat in the back burner. But now that the sort of cryptocurrency hype is definitely gone away now, or at least it is a lot weaker than it used to be. Now there's a lot more people who are putting their interest into this artificial intelligence technology, and it is showing some surprising we're kind of, because like this is the technology that there was a lot of hype like 10 years ago. If you know about that, like sort of that graph, the sort of trough of despair or whatever, this one really took off early on, and then really went down, and now it's sort of coming back on like what it could actually achieve to change society. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Whew. Hopefully that all made sense. Like, this is the reason why I want to make this video, is because I am a leftist. I also have a semi-working understanding of computer science, and I also understand historical materialism, and I would like to combine all of those into a video. And yeah. It's ironic how leftists are anti-capitalist yet uncritically support modern and future technology that is only developed for the good of capitalists. This is the thing. Under a capitalist economy, literally all technological development is made for the good of capital. Well, that's not even true. The thing is that this technology does not necessarily just come from capitalist firms. That is a myth that a lot of tech companies would like you to believe. A lot of this work has been done in university laboratories for years. And this is another case where a bunch of basic research being done by computer scientists and people with earnest interest in basic research, once it finally starts to bear fruit, then all these tech companies start coming in and using this stuff that was developed by scientists to do stuff. It's just like the cell phone all over again. Yeah. The problem, though, is that like a lot of the big tech companies are so blatantly evil that we are very much aware that it's going to be misused. Just like how the people of the people of the sabot. The sabot wearing people, like the artisans wearing their sabots, saw the danger inherent in the development of steam power and automatic factory making of manufactured goods, and they saw that as a threat, and so they also wrote big screeds about why automatic looms are evil, and they were doing things like destroying the machines by putting their these sort of wooden shoes into the machines to break them, which is the origins of the word sabotage, as far as I know it. And so, yeah. And the thing is, now that it's been a few hundred years, we don't talk about, we don't talk about factories being evil or the idea of industrialization being evil. But if we do it especially because we grew up in a sort of like, what's it called? Man. I'm just getting like, what's it called? I feel like I'm being attacked, but either way, this is fine. I will have things to say later, but in many ways, the development of the development of our the one interesting thing that I definitely want to talk about in it is that when when industrialization started to come for a lot of high-paying manufacturing jobs in the mid-20th century, a lot of information workers, liberals and such, they took that as an opportunity to abandon that manufacturing class because they weren't having their jobs automated away. So it was fine for them. Their professional, managerial, jobs that required, writing emails or whatever, that wasn't going away. So they basically, in the 1970s, just basically abandoned the sort of new left, just abandoned organized labor. It abandoned, solidarity with the working class because they were suffering, and then the information workers weren't. And now the same thing is happening to information workers, and they don't have allies anymore because they didn't do anything to stop the sort of the trotting over of the they just left the industrial workers when all of the factories started using automation to replace factory workers. They just told them to learn how to code or whatever and abandoned them. And so created the places like the Rust Belt in the United States, where there's entire classes of people whose entire livelihoods just disappeared and there was really nothing to replace it. And now when the same thing happens to the elite educated class, then all of a sudden this is the most evil technology that's ever existed and it needs to be destroyed at all costs. And that shows that I think that there's shows that a lot of the left today do not understand Marxism and are still fundamentally approaching politics and economics through a liberal lens, which I am, my job is to try and educate people through these kinds of things, because it's not a not understandable position, because we all grew up under neoliberal capitalism. We understand the world through a liberal frame of reference, even if we don't believe in that system, because that's what we do. That's just the default. And to break through that is going to be a little bit more complicated. So to continue my very, very long intro, if you have any questions you want to submit, I'm going to put a link in the chat. There's a URL. You can go there and submit questions. I hang on to them for a month, so if I don't get them to them today, I can come and answer them later in future streams. And also, if there's any new people in the chat, if this is your first time in here, make yourself known and say hello. We have a very friendly community here. And, yeah, always happy to see new faces show up and join in. Longtime fan of the Alien podcast. That's awesome. I'm very happy. I like that. I'm glad that there are people who we're now starting to see a little bit of the phenomenon of people who found Scott and I through the podcast rather than finding the podcast or the YouTube channels. And so now when we find people who only know us through our podcast, it's actually very strange. But I'm glad that the podcast is really doing it for some people. I feel like it's a much more broadly liked, it has more broad appeal than Step Back usually does. So I'm happy to keep doing it. Also, it seems that some people are liking the fact that it seems like some people are watching us asynchronously. Like I've stopped delisting the streams after they're done, so people have started watching the streams after they air, which is great. I love it. Because that means that, you know, you can see the stream when it isn't airing. Is Probs Not Aliens on YouTube? Yes, it is. There is a It's Probably Not Aliens YouTube channel that you can find. And on that, you can also... what's it called? There's a It's Probably Not Aliens YouTube channel. The videos come out a little bit delayed because I get to them whenever I can. But I try to have them so that the episodes come out, you know, less than a week after the episode comes out as a podcast. But I will say that it is the slowest way to get new episodes. But if you like to only listen to podcasts through YouTube videos, it is there. It is available, and it's not like you have to wait like months between episodes. I do try to get them out on a fairly regular basis. Any plans for the 100th IPNA episode? Not yet, although it's going to be this year, I guess, isn't it? Because we are. I think I'm currently working on episode 72 of the podcast. Yeah. I'm currently doing the research for episode 72 of It's Probably Not Aliens. And episode 74 is going to be another corrections, and episode 73 might be a part 2 for episode 72. So that means that, like, it could be after I'm done researching this episode, or moving right to episode 75, which is, 3/4 of the way to 100, so, yeah. So what I'm saying is, I haven't thought about it, but I probably should think about it. Alrighty. Whew, I guess it's time for you to answer some questions, to ace some Qs, eh? Fan of Scott's comic and Scooby content and founding the pod through him. Very grateful for your content. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad I am entertaining you. I need to listen to the podcast. I guess I just figured it would get kind of repetitive with the content and stuff to actually say. If you're thinking that it's going to be too similar to Step Back, I would say it's very much not. And we do try the way that and like I don't. Like, the original plan for the podcast was that it was just going to be like this episode of Ancient Aliens, then we reply to every single piece. But my instant thought was, no, every episode needs to have a single topic and go into a deep dive on that. It means that we're going through the show a lot slower, but we're not going to have like repetitive stuff. Like, every episode is about a different thing. And I also, when we deal with topics, we don't just debunk the UFO stuff. I try to give a sort of context and like tell you what the actual history is and sort of develop on that. Thoughts on China aiding Vladimir Putin in Ukraine? It's not a surprise. Russia and China are allies. And China is like sort of the other pole in the sort of bipolar world that we're moving into. Like I don't know what else to say. Like, yeah, it's not great that the war is going to just keep moving on. I'd really wish it would end at some point because it's, it's hurting people. People are dying, and it's mostly being inflated by sort of greater global geopolitics. But like, yeah, I don't like. There's not a lot of like, insightful things to say. War is bad. It always has been bad. And more money and weapons being poured into a war to make it even more deadly and last even longer is bad. Because I don't even know at this point what coming out the other side of the war is at this point. Hearing that India might move into this spot in the three-way standoff now that Russia is not as strong. Could be. Although, like, I would say that, like, the kind of thing that's going on right now, India's got an interesting geopolitical future ahead of it because India does have very close ties with Russia. It has for decades. As long as India has existed, pretty much, it's had a pretty close relationship. Because basically, after India got independence, it reached out to the Soviet Union, and in the same way that Pakistan reached out to the British and the Americans, and they were geopolitical rivals. And India and the Soviet Union had a very close and friendly relationship. Not enough that India ever joined the Comintern or anything like that, but enough that India was, playing pretty comfortably with both sides of the Cold War. It's one of the defining countries of the, was there President Nehru? Was Nehru the Indian prime minister who negotiated basically like one of the big players in the non-aligned movement during the Cold War? But Russia and India have collaborated a lot. Like the ISRO program, India got its nuclear weapons from Russia. It's sort of part of the thing. And now, though, the way that it's working is that Russia is not like the world superpower anymore. It's very much subservient to China, which is becoming quickly like the dominant rival superpower of the United States. But the thing is that India has close relationships with Russia, but does not have good relationships with China. India and China have still some open border disputes, and they have, as the two big mega superpowers of Asia, that share several very complicated land borders. It's always been a tough relationship. I think you guys might have heard that there was a few years ago a weird border clash between the two countries where people were attacking each other with rebar and shit. It was insane. So Chinese-Indian relations have never been super great. I think they might have been better in the 40s and 50s, but now it's definitely not great. But there's sort of a complicated thing because India still has a pretty close relationship with Russia, even in Modi's call for this is actually, what's it called? Noam Chomsky told me this in the interview I did with him. Even Modi's whole speech talking about wanting peace in Ukraine still had a lot in there talking about how Russia and India still have a very close relationship and still a lot of respect for each other, and that the relationship between India and Russia has never been closer. As Russia becomes more sort of dependent on China as an ally to counter American power, it's that relationship's going to get more complicated. Will U.S., Canada normalize relationships with Afghanistan? They tolerate Saudi Arabia. They tolerate Saudi Arabia because of Saudi Arabia's petrol power. if it was like, what's it called? Americans have a very, like, the American and Canadian foreign policy has a very selective relationship to to human rights, depending upon how useful an ally they are. Afghanistan is not a very useful ally. Afghanistan's a very strategically important region. It's very it's situated between a bunch of very powerful countries. But I mean, maybe the United States will probably, like, the US and Canada definitely have some incentive to make some sort of like open of talks to Afghanistan. Although I feel like the way that they're probably going to weigh it is that diplomatically right now, Afghanistan is probably not going to want to talk to the country that has been occupying them for several decades, but they will probably at some point, when they have to like find international allies, they will probably find them in Beijing. And so we'll see what happens with the Taliban once, like, because Afghanistan also shares a border with China. So we'll see what happens. I wonder if, like, the Americans don't think it's worth the investment to try and normalize relations with Afghanistan when the country has a very obvious. It's very obvious that it will fall into this sort of the center of gravity of Beijing at some point. Afghanistan does border with China, and it does border with Russia. I think Afghanistan borders with Russia, doesn't it? If it doesn't, it's close. Gotta go back to my map and take a look. Okay, it doesn't border with Russia, but it borders with the Central Asian stands, which are also very tightly related with Russia. What about Iran's angle in the region? Iran is also... so basically what's going on is that there's been a Cold War going on in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This has been going on for decades. Iraq used to sort of be more of a... Iraq used to be closer to being on the American side, weirdly enough. Long history of America supporting Saddam Hussein. But after the dissolution of the government, actually Iraq's Sunni or Shiite majority is being more assertive, and so Iraq is probably, on long enough timescale, might be following more into Iran's sphere of influence. But Iran is also a Chinese ally and a Russian ally, and always will be, because they're another one of many countries that have been burned by the United States' imperialist foreign policy, and will turn to whoever can help them oppose the American attempt to choke them out of existence. And the people in the past, in the past couple decades, America would be like, who else are you going to go to? And now they actually have somebody else to go to, and that's Beijing. Xi Jinping will come and help out. And a lot of countries, especially countries like Iran, that's sort of like this weird sort of theocratic republic, that actually get a lot out of this because China doesn't really ask a lot of questions about how you govern yourself. They don't really care if you're a dictator or a theocrat or whatever, as long as you're willing to, if you're willing to, build a belt and wheel initiative through your country, which... If you think about it, if you want to build a highway from Beijing all the way down into the Democratic Republic of Congo, part of that involves having to go through Iran. There's really no other way about it unless you start unless you can build a bridge across the Caspian Sea, or want to build your highway through Siberia. You have to go through Iran, and yeah. But Iran definitely has what's it called? Iran definitely will want to stay close with their allies in Beijing because, America is always working so goddamn hard to strangle that country out of existence. I imagine the PRC's treatment of Uyghurs complicates things with those Muslim majority countries. I mean, to an extent. Thing is that people's loyalty to people of common ethnicity or religion tends to go away pretty fast in the great game of geopolitics. Anyways, I should probably answer at least one question before I get halfway through this stream. So let's see. Orange Man, if you could have one person from the past on your podcasts, who would it be and why? Man, who would be a really good historical figure to have on... what's it called? To have on It's Probably Not Aliens? Damn. Part of me wants to say something stupid like Mitch Hedberg, but actually Carl Sagan is a pretty good answer. Carl Sagan would be a great person to come on the podcast. I said Mitch Hedberg, and then instantly I got a better answer in the chat. So. Mitch Hedberg dying was one of like the greatest losses for comedy. Man. I mean, in some ways, I'm glad he's not alive so that I have to learn what horrible position he's going to have on the dumb culture wars that a lot of older stand-up comics are having now. But, you know. But I'm glad that, you know, he's still in my head. He's still, you know, he is still baby. He is still innocent. He's still just a long string of very funny one-liners. And his jokes are so immortal. Like saying a banana is a reverse traffic light because green means stop, yellow means go, and and red means where did you find a red banana? Suspect Sagan had very centrist politics, probably, but you know, it still would be a very entertaining episode of It's Probably Not Aliens. Man, this music is hopping. I love it. I feel like I'm playing like Street Fighter or something. Or I should say, I never had a Super Nintendo. This music, the music actually reminds me of, there was the only Super Nintendo game I played a lot was on a Super Nintendo emulator. And it was basically just a reskin of the Power Rangers fighting game. But it was done with the assets of Gundam Wing. I think it was called Gundam Wing Endless Duel. Is that the name of the game? I played a lot of Gundam Wing Endless Duel when I was in high school. There are a couple of Gundam fighting games on the PS1. Yeah, I never had those. Well, what's it called? I don't actually know if Endless Duel ever came out in America. That I'm curious about. Because my anime connections are very loose, and Gundam Wing is just one of like the two animes that I have experience watching because it was what was on TV when I was like in grade 8. So I don't know. I have never watched any other Gundam series. The only one I know is Gundam Wing. And I played it. I played the fighting game because I thought it was fun. I used to have I had one of those snap together models of Ultron, Altron, which there's a point in Gundam Wing where all of the Gundams get destroyed and then they all have to get like big upgrades. And I always liked Wu Fei and like sort of Shenlong, the Gundam Shenlong, which was the one that had the big flamethrower arm and the trident. And it got turned into Ultron, Altron, after it got upgraded, where it had 2 flamethrower arms and a double trident. It was great. No notes. Perfect. Just the most. The most. Twice the flamethrower arms, twice the fun, yeah. Alright. Let's see. Life is depressing right now, so here's a pick-me-up. What kind of tabletop role-playing game... What type of tabletop games, RPGs, but other types of games have I played recently? Wow. Honestly, not a plant. This question is not a plant, and I know that it has to piss off the audience that it seems like every week I go on a TTRPG rant, so I'm going to keep this one small. But Pim Corman Cybercat, it's their fault for this one. So, yeah. So, all right. As far as games I've been playing lately, I still am stuck in endless games of 5th edition because that's just what everyone wants to play, and there's some campaigns that need to end and everything like that. But I do have more, which is that I have found a new group, and I'll tell you, this is a very funny group. So one of the things that happened is that my PhD supervisor, just because whenever I moved back to London, I not intentionally, when I bought a house, I ended up moving like 2 blocks away from my old PhD supervisor, who is also really into TTRPGs. And we were having dinner about a month ago, or maybe it's about a month ago. And we were talking about how we both really we're both stuck in playing, because he was playing in this years long GURPS campaign. And when he wants to play with with other with his kids and his kids' friends and stuff like that, it's always D&D or he basically we both were talking about how we both were sitting on these giant piles of all of these cool RPGs that we want to play, but nobody ever wants to. So we were well, why don't we get together every so often and actually try these with one shots or short campaigns or whatnot. And so we did. And so we we decided to do that, and we had a session 0 for it last week, and next weekend we're coming together to play the first session of Avatar Legends, which is the Avatar: The Last Airbender game, and it's a very fun looking game. We already did sort of the group building activities, and that was really good. And the other one is I've been playing a lot of a game called 5 Parsecs from Home, which is sort of like a miniatures war game, but it can be played solo. It's a very good game. It's always so fun to play, and it's basically a science fiction, tabletop strategy war or tactical war game, but it has a whole thing where you do it in what are called campaign turns, where the missions you take and everything like that are all dynamically developed, and there's quests and all sorts of stuff that are really cool. It's called 5 Parsecs from Home. I think there's 2 expansions out right now, but the game is called 5 Parsecs from Home. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. And there is actually an expansion that came out maybe 2 weeks ago that has a new optional mode where you can play if you don't even have miniatures. So you can just play it all you need is some dice and maybe some paper to take notes, and you can play completely solo. But But if you do have miniatures or like a grid or anything like that, you can totally play it that way too. But I don't collect minis, so I typically play it with like little tokens on a website called Owlbear Rodeo, which is sort of like a stripped down, simple version for doing D&D combat. All right, but that's the main things I've been playing lately. I did play the beginner box of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I have been preparing for that because I'm playing I'm running a Pathfinder one shot next week, so that's the other thing I'm doing. But that is all. That is all. All right, I swear that's the end of all of my talks. I know that there are people. TTRPG talk is very polarizing in the Step Back stream world, and I know I can watch it because I can see my viewership go down as soon as I start talking about it. But so I try not to dwell on it for too long. What is my take on the war in Ukraine after the 1 year anniversary? Good question. Good question is what people say when they're trying to stall. I don't think I have anything super profound to say about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. I posted a comment complaining why you didn't ask Chomsky about his more recent sus takes, and then I realized it was totally unreasonable and deleted it. I saw it because it sends an email whenever you write a comment on Patreon, but it was just, the very least, like, I didn't want to burn any bridges with Noam fucking Chomsky, but also it was outside of sort of the subject of the interview, which is about the Iraq War. Anyways. The war in Ukraine is a tough thing to hit because there's the war machine, especially the war media machine, is so high right now that if you like, maybe it's less hot than it used to be, but if you have anything approaching nuance relating to the war in Ukraine, you can like get absolutely like just lambasted by people because the sort of like, first of all, the war is such a terrible thing. Like, I will establish it by saying the one big thing. One, that Russia is definitely completely unreasonable in its invasion of Ukraine. It is a naked act of aggression in order to keep a country from deciding its own fate. That also being said, the war is also being used by the United States in order to counter Russian power and advance its own interests in the region. And at the same time, it's a little concerning that what in far right wing, like in like the areas of people talking about studying the dangers of the far right, everybody up until about a year ago was talking about the dangers of groups like Azov Battalion because they were becoming a place where people in the far right could go and learn military tactics before going back and doing terrorism at home. And then the second the war started, this conversation completely ended. And I have a feeling that because they are going to play such a big part in the war, that if the war ever does end, it's going to end with them getting a form of legitimacy that is going to be very dangerous. And a bunch of American and Western weapons are going to flow into the country. And you can't get all that shit out. And oftentimes they don't even bother trying to get that shit out after the war is over. So I don't like the idea of a bunch of like far-right militias getting fuckloads of weapons that they can then use later on to do horrible things with. So that I don't like. Not a fan of that. But at the same time, so like in my mind, I feel like the only unique take I have is that both sides of the war are bad, and that there's not really, except for like the Ukrainian people who are being invaded are and having the war drawn out because of the games played between geopolitical empires. It seems like there's it's just never going to. It's just like. the way that it's being set up right now is because so many Western weapons are being dumped into the region, and China just also announced that it's going to sort of put some new life back into the Russian military, which definitely stalled heavily in the war because it realized it's really not as good as they thought it was. So, because of that, because of the geopolitics being played in this new Cold War between China and the United States, this war is going to drag out forever, and lots of people are going to die needlessly. If it ever comes to a resolution, well, I mean, it will eventually come to a resolution, but it could be that it just becomes a quagmire for years and years and years, in which the Ukrainian people are going to be the ones who suffer. Because, like, one way or another, the war definitely, one way or another, the war ending would be better for the Ukrainian people than it just sort of lingering on forever. And in some ways, this has been a war that's been lingering since, 10 years ago, or 9 years ago more. And it's not a geopolitical, it's been a year, and I still don't see a way that we walk away from this. I don't see a path to it ending, unless the path ending is with negotiating the release of Luhansk and Donetsk and Crimea, which is kind of an unacceptable answer to Ukraine and to the United States. So, I don't see a way of this coming to an end that doesn't involve nuclear war. And that's not good, but which to me makes me think that that's probably not even an option. So I would say that what's going to happen is that Ukraine is going to continue to be a sort of quagmire where both sides of the Cold War dump weapons and munitions and into the country, and it leads to just people dying in huge numbers for years and years and years to come. Yeah. Unless the Ukrainian people overthrow Zelensky and replace him with, somebody who's more Russia-friendly, or if Russia has a major change in its geopolitical, outlook, I really don't see things changing in the near-term future for it. And that's sad, because the current situation is a very bad one for the people who are stuck between these two empires, trying to use the Ukrainian people to basically try and bleed the other side out of money and blood and treasure, basically, right? So, and the thing is that answer, I have said that answer on streams, and I've said it in videos even, and I have been called a sycophant for Putin for saying that, which I think is ridiculous. And I think that shows just how bad the propaganda situation is right now, where even thinking that the war has nuances is unacceptable. And I don't like that precedent being set. I also find that the naked jingoism is really uncomfortable to me as someone who lived through the Iraq War. I was on a walk today. I was on a walk today where I passed several houses that are just flying Ukrainian flags in Canada. Dear God. Also, the longer the war goes, the more that groups like Azov Battalion are going to become more and more influential, because they're part of the groups that are, shooting and dying for the Ukrainian government. And they're definitely going to be the war is definitely going to help them recruit. Unfortunately, though, this seems to be the fate of the fucking Ukrainians, because they always get treated like they're a buffer zone between Russia and the rest of Europe. Historically, this has been the case, and it fucking sucks for the people who live there. And I'm glad that we're also being very receptive in taking refugees from the country, but I also think a lot about how this same, like, eagerness to help, what's it called? This eagerness to help Ukrainian refugees, or this eagerness to help refugees, was definitely not apparent when it was the civil war in Syria. And I can't imagine white that is. So, it's, yeah. I hate it. I hate it all. Okay. It won't fit on a bumper sticker, so people won't like it. Yeah. I need to have like if I had a car, I'll have a bumper sticker that says, "My feelings on the war in Ukraine are complicated." That won't work. That won't work, right? Been watching Picard season 3. I'm optimistic so far, but I was optimistic at this point in season 2. Yeah. I like it. There's been 2 episodes. They've both been good. There's an intriguing mystery at its core. I'm a bad person to ask about this because this is the other thing. This is now we're done with TTRPG talk. Now I can talk about Star Trek. Yeah, Picard season 3 has been fun. I am bad at talking about this because I've never really hated, like, the only Star Trek I've ever really hated is Enterprise and maybe like some parts of TOS, but like I've never hated Picard. It's definitely like, not as good as some other ones, but I've never like actively disliked it like a lot of other people have. So obviously my taste is very different. I've liked parts of it through the entire run of the show. I like the concept of Raffi. Like, I feel like Raffi is a really interesting, complex character that because of the show structure isn't going to get her story's not going to come full circle in a way that I would like. But, or it's kind of like how Rios just got abruptly written off. But either way, it's a show that I like more than most of the things on TV right now. So. What is my alternative then? Appeasement. Oh boy. Digging out the World War II stuff, huh? I don't have an answer. If I had an answer to how to stop a seemingly endless war in Ukraine that doesn't end up with either giving up a whole bunch of sovereign territory to a person who is obviously trying to do a expansion of his regional influence, or doesn't result in fucking nuclear fire, I feel like I should win the Nobel Peace Prize, but I don't have that answer. I'm not... Have I ever watched Dimension 20? Yeah. I was actually watching an episode of it today while I was out for my walk. I was listening to it, but I'm listening to the Unsleeping City season, and it's good. How is it endless? Because Russia is a massive economic power that has not only like the keys to a lot of the energy that Europe needs, but also has a pretty good ally in Beijing. So, like, if push came to shove, they have nearly limitless resources to commit to this war. And the Ukrainians also have a virtually limitless carte blanche, or what's it called, blank check from Washington and most of Western Europe. And so none of the people who are holding the purse strings really have any strong reason to back down. And because of the stakes of this, because I think Russia's betting the farm on this this war, like there's like Russia has no reason to Russia would go to some pretty drastic extents rather than back down. But at the moment, it seems like the war is pretty stalled at the moment. And yeah, I feel like it's in the geopolitical interests of the West to keep the war going because it's a constant drain on freaking Russia's resources, and Russia doesn't like be for geopolitical grandeur reasons. They have like they will go to some pretty ridiculous extremes before they have to back down. Anyways. Let's see. On this, Oye Beltaloda, nice name, asks, what is violence? Can you go into all the forms of violence that we don't typically think about? Sure. Geez. How to answer that? I always think that violence is about the non-consensual imposition of one's will over the other, whether that be, inflicting harm, but also like, gosh. Yeah, and that can come up in a whole lot of different things, but I'm trying to think about, can you go into all of the forms of violence that we don't typically think about? Like oppression, or as you put in here, borders, or capitalism, or friggin' traditional social norms. Yeah, those are all definitely things. I feel like I would need to sit and write an essay to really answer this question properly, unfortunately. Do you think there will ever be free movement in the US and Canada like they have in the European Union? That is a good question. I gotta stop saying that. It's such a killer of momentum. My guess is no. America doesn't seem like it's ever going to be in a position where it's going to be lightening its borders, and in my lifetime, all I have ever seen is the borders getting harder to go through, not easier. So that's where I would say I'm on that, is that it seems like it's going to get harder to get through because America seems to be more interested in clamping down its borders than opening them up lately. The only other option would be is that, I don't even know. I can't. It's like at some point Canada is going to just have to be very heavily leveraged by the United States for all of our fresh water, but I don't think that's going to result in any freedom of movement or anything like that. We in North America don't do our politics even close to that rationally. Do I ever watch the historian TIK on YouTube? He has interesting takes. No, I've never watched it. I've seen the name, but I don't really know anything else about the channel. What's better than pancakes? Ooh. Good question. What's it called? Pancakes are pretty good. I don't have them very often anymore because they're not very healthy, but they're good. That's for sure. I used to be more into waffles, but that has changed lately. But I believe TIK has arguments that are worth addressing. Okay. I don't know what to answer with that. I don't know anything about this person. Anyways, in your last stream you talked about the Dems will probably lose in 24. I know that's the case, but I keep deliberately not thinking about it because there are so many queer Americans I have parasocial connection to that are not, and don't want to acknowledge their lives may be threatened in the next few years. I get anxious and depressed so easily that I actually think it makes me a bad ally. Like, I'll choose to not think about bad stuff happening to queer people. Okay, what should I do? Jeez. Work on your own mental health, I suppose. Like, what's it called? You can't really help others unless you take care of yourself. You know, do that or whatever, but you know, definitely do what you can otherwise too, because like at this point, like we're getting to like I've seen some people who are currently working on trying to use student visas as a way to help trans people get out of America and get into Canada, because one of the easiest ways to get through Canada's fucking weird Byzantine immigration system is to come over as a student and then get a job and sort of pivot that into a permanent residentship. It's complicated. But people are apparently working on some like information sheets to help trans people in America get into Canada so that they can, because yes, there is like a serious like anti-LGBT lockdown happening in a lot of American states, and probably after the 2024 election, it's going to get a lot worse. And so helping trans people sort of escape into Canada, because Canada, for geopolitical reasons, will refuse to accept LGBT American refugees trying to escape. So we're going to have to do it sort of on our own. The West Coast has Canada's only center-left government. True, but also like, yeah. Things aren't great in Canada either, but they are certainly getting bad a lot slower than they are in America. Our provincial governments are like, we have like, Canada has like a sort of political history of our conservatives being very adamant about not being socially conservative, about not focusing on culture war issues. There's sort of like part of like Canadian political culture involves sort of staying away from culture war type political issues, but that's becoming less and less the case, and the conservatives are playing more and more with reactionary bullshit in order to stop their in order to try and get themselves over the hump and win the election, because they keep coming close but not quite getting enough votes to dethrone Justin Trudeau. So because of sort of the way that we have our districting right now, the last two elections, the Conservatives have gotten more votes, but they don't have government because they win by humongous margins in like Alberta and Saskatchewan, but the Liberals have like small marginal victories in many other places to the point where they always get more seats. Canada's getting worse slower. Might be true for LGBT issues, but that's certainly not the case for natives, which is important to consider as people become unofficial refugees or all stolen land. Can you rephrase what you're trying to say there? I just don't think I understand the argument you're trying to make. Because like I'm not gonna like deny that Canada has a horrible treatment of our Indigenous people. That is true. But I don't know what you're getting at. In our current situation, helping trans people escape the United States and the UK, let's be honest, seems like a thing to do. Why is it so hard to get people to stop buying Harry Potter stuff? The recent stuff isn't even good anyways. Yeah, I wish I knew. I feel like Harry Potter's like gotten consistently less good the older I got, but it seems like there's way too many like weird millennials who based way too much of their personality off of those books. And so there's like three camps now of the Harry Potter discussion, right? I think that Renegade Cut had a pretty good discussion about it. Like one, there are people who, out of, a reassessment of the books, but also respect for LGBTQ plus people, have decided to, even if they did like Harry Potter as young people, have moved away from the franchise. Two, people who are in like an insane culture war, who are basically doing whatever they can, like who are now getting into Harry Potter because it owns the libs or whatever. Those people are, I don't know, they're pieces of shit, whatever. And third are sort of maybe centrist libs or just liberals in general, or maybe just people who aren't really checked into politics that much, who either find some sort of like, either they don't know about all the shit with J.K. Rowling and the TERF shit, or they are contorting themselves into fucking like pretzels trying to excuse why them buying Harry Potter shit is going to it's fine. Like, it's like, what's it called? Like, they either pull like a no ethical consumption under capitalism, or one time, because I had a very interesting set of responses where every time I received a promoted tweet from Hogwarts Legacy, or anytime I was on TikTok and I saw people doing a sponsored post by Hogwarts Legacy, I just replied with the words trans rights. Nothing else, just trans rights. And I got so much fucking like nuclear vitriol from that. It was absolutely wild. And I feel like it's the kind of hate that I've only ever seen reserved for like people who make it their entire personality to hate vegans. And it's because it's like this, it's this reactionary mental contortion where what you're doing is unethical, but you are in a very sensitive way trying to not think about that, or to justify it in your own mind through various techniques. It's sort of why studies on mental resiliency and like quickness to anger show that people who show a lot of self-confidence, but people who show a lot of self-confidence but might not actually be confident in their own minds seem to be the most likely to react over the top to criticism. And it's because they don't feel secure in that confidence. And I feel like there's a lot of people who know that Harry Potter is like that, by buying into Harry Potter, you're doing something shitty. And they just go through insane amounts of mental contortion in order to in order to basically say to them, like, actually it's fine that I'm doing this. And so Yeah, you're even seeing like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not vegan at all, but I do know that if you were to, you know, rank the different diets on a moral scale, like veganism is probably the more ethical way to live your life. Like that's like it is. You're definitely living your life in a much more sustainable fashion and in a way that has no, or at least as little animal cruelty as you can. But people are like, you know, going through extreme contortions to try and say why eating meat is good or why why veganism is bad. Like we just got one in the chat that it promotes malnutrition, which is a thing I know is a fact is not true. Veganism can be a very healthy way to live their life. There are people who've lived their entire lives as vegans. There are entire societies that that eat a vegan lifestyle and they are perfectly healthy. Like I like, what's it called? That's not, but like, that's a comfortable place for your brain to sit in, right? Like to be like, oh yeah, I am making the less ethical choice because of my personal comfort or my personal desires. And and a lot of times I feel like that insecurity is why a lot of people really lash out at certain types of like lifestyle stuff. And I think that it comes out in like the people who get really, really angry about veganism, the people who get really, really angry when asked to just not consume a specific product, like a wizard game. I think that it comes from that place. Hey, thank you for the 10 GBP super chat. You know when you're like 6 and mom tells you can't have something and all you can say is, but I really, really want it? That's how I imagine leftists who still want to buy the game. I haven't seen a lot of leftists who want to buy the game. The only one I saw was Hassan Piker, and Hassan Piker did have a fucking temper tantrum about not being able to buy the Wizard game, which I thought was absolutely fucking juvenile, but because the thing is, like, people are trying to twist it as like, oh, this is a boycott, you're trying to boycott the game. Well, you know boycotts don't work, and like everyone knows boycotts don't work. But it wasn't about like it wasn't about that. It was about like it's about setting it up so that nobody no time can like Harry Potter can't come out without at least acknowledging that it should be controversial. Like honestly, like if you bought the game and didn't say anything about it, nobody would know. Nobody would know. But the thing is, like, the people who are freaking out the most about it, not only want to play the fucking Wizard game, but they want moral permission to play the Wizard game. Because the idea that you are doing something that is immoral, that you are letting down allies by playing this game, you don't like that. You want to say that you are a good person while doing something that is objectively bad. And and I feel like that fits. Like the thing is, like I'm not a vegan. I eat meat. I know that is an ethically bad choice. I know that I am making choices that promote cruelty towards animals. I know that I'm making choices that contribute to the unsustainable economic things that are contributing to the ecological breakdown. And I could make some arguments like, well, you know, no ethical consumption under capitalism, or you know, like what's it called? Like we're not going to get the sort of critical mass of people not eating meat to do it. And I'm like, well, you know, like those aren't arguments, those are rationalizations. And I kind of got to a point where it's like I can't rationalize it. It is a bad thing I do, and it's a thing that I it's a thing that I do that is not good. Steve Shives made a really good video about this called "Don't Make Me Feel Bad for Doing a Bad Thing." Yeah, that's a good answer. Like, to be honest, like the only on the freaking health aspect, the only issue that vegans run into is the only actual thing there's two things that, as far as I can tell, that that vegans run into trouble with. One is the one you can't get around, which is vitamin B12. That the only source that we really have in food of vitamin B12 is from meat. But there are non-animal ways to get it that you can easily supplement. Like, there are lots of animals that do not eat any animal products whatsoever, and they still get their vitamin B12. That's why, like, a lot of animals that eat plants lick things that are salty, because they're trying to get that kind of stuff, because you can get it from rocks. And so every vegan takes vitamin B12 supplements. Wow. Real complicated. The other is that, what's it called? The other is that, that if you just cut meat out of your diet or animal products out of your diet, and you don't change the kinds of things you put into your body, you can have there are certain types of things, especially like iron and things like that, that if you don't, change the way that you eat your food, then, or the kind of food that you prepare, then it could cause problems. I learned this firsthand because I didn't stop eating meat, but there was a point last year where I stopped eating red meat for a very long time, and I got anemic and I got very, very sick. And I had to start taking iron supplements. And like a lot of vegans either take iron supplements or they just eat more vegetables that are rich in iron that, that you have to, because that's just part of life. Harry Potter thing is starting to sound a lot like Ian Danskin's Why Are You So Angry? Yeah, Ian Danskin's got a great video on that topic about, like, why are you so angry? It's like, yeah, I forgot that was the name of the video. Am I going to stop eating meat then? If not, then why? I mean, here's the way that I would take it. One, I'm probably not going to, because I don't... And the rationalization that I guess I've built is that I am not in 100% control of my own diet, because I don't live alone. I am married. I have a baby. And honestly, it would be a lot of friction to impose that on my family. Plus, I also, I'm lazy. And I know it's not a great thing to do. It's a bad habit of mine. And if I, in a vacuum, if I were living my best life, if I were 100% in control, I did not live in a situation where I'm balancing, I'd probably try, but shit's complicated. But yeah. And they're not what's it called? I'm not see, you can already see in the chat that there is that there are people who are on the defense. That's why people have gone to long lengths to think of these really out there attempts to talk about why eating food that actively involves the pain and death of a living creature is somehow just as ethical as eating a plant-based diet. A lot of, and yeah, there's a lot of animal products in random stuff that's not edible, and it is more difficult. That's why no vegan that I know actually is they're not it's not a religious thing for them. It is, they do what they can. Every vegan I know has never been self-righteous and in many ways I think I feel like the idea of the self-righteous vegan who tries to tell everybody that they're being shitty and goes to extreme lengths to make sure that if those people exist, they are very rare. And for the most part, it is a person that people made up in their heads to talk about why they don't like vegans. So, what about vegan activists who go to extreme lengths? I mean, I know some people like what's it called? One of my closest friends is Mexi. Mexi's a vegan activist, and she's not like that at all. But, you know, it could be that there are people like that. It could they probably do exist. I mean, there are people who are, you know, very intense about everything. But I think they're not as common as people try to portray them as. Yeah, man. People will bend themselves like pretzels to defend their chicken nuggets. I mean, we're seeing it in the chat right now. There's a lot of pretzel making right now. Anyways, I don't want to harp on it too long, but it just speaks to like the Hogwarts Legacy thing in a little bit to sort of circle back to the actual thing we were talking about, which is that, people get very defensive when confronted with the idea that they are making a personal choice that isn't ethical, or that is not the most ethical option. And because we have a sort of a dedication to, like, you know, maintaining the concept of ourselves as good people, we're also very good creatures at rationalizing things. We will go to extreme lengths to make the argument about why, you know, give ourselves moral permission for doing the thing. Because, like, as I said, everybody who plays, like, people, like, the fact that, like, I saw an article that was like how to play Hogwarts Legacy without, like, you know, because you know how there's like all this like social stuff around games now, right? Like, if you're playing on a console, your gamer friends will see like, oh, so and so is playing Hogwarts Legacy, that piece of shit. Or the really funny one, which was Kira Chats, the Twitch streamer. She saw somebody was playing Hogwarts Legacy that was a member of her Discord server and just banned him for that reason alone. And I was like, okay, that's funny. But like, the thing is, like, for the like, this article was about how to hide that you're playing Hogwarts Legacy from your friends, and it's like, you don't write articles like that if you know that, like, it's not something you should be doing, right? It's not good. It's not a good thing to be doing. But either way, like, if you were just like, if you were willing to just acknowledge that you are doing a thing that is bad, that is harmful for your own convenience or for your own petty desires, then just buy the game and don't tell anybody. Just do it. Just do it. But the problem is that they don't just want to play the game. They want the moral permission. They want to know that they're still good people. And that is that's tough for them to do. What about that one VTuber who broke down from the stream from all the harassment from playing the Wizard game? Okay. I wouldn't call... I mean, harassment of being disappointed in somebody, I don't know. I'm very dubious of that. It's like if I was playing the Turner Diaries video game and then people were like, ugh, I don't really like that you're playing the Turner Diaries video game. You know, that guy is a white supremacist who is, like, you know, actively helped the white supremacist movement. And I'll be like, I'm being harassed. I'm being harassed just because I'm playing this game that openly is profiting or giving profit to a bigot. Like, whatever. Help, help, I'm being harassed by people who are saying I shouldn't be playing this game I shouldn't be playing. Anyways. Am I familiar with Beau the Fifth Column and his recent outing as a human trafficker? Essentially Andrew Tate without the sex work part. I don't, like, I'm aware of Beau the Fifth Column. I don't know shit about, like, I've heard this, like, human trafficking thing. I have not had enough interest in both the fifth column is, I don't know, fine, I guess, but I don't know anything about this. Like, I've heard this story, I've heard this human trafficking claim before, and something makes me think that I'm not getting the full story here. This feels like a what's it called? This feels like that there's more going on here. But either way, I'm not invested in, like, you know, a lot of shit that's going on with other YouTubers for the most part. I didn't even know who Andrew Tate was until like a month ago. Can I talk about the anti-drag legislation that's one vote away in Tennessee? Yeah, it fucking sucks. They're banning drag shows in Tennessee. I think there's another state that's also looking at it, and I think it's fucking horrible. And that's why, like, you know, we need to be doing stuff to get like trans refugees, and even though, like, you know, drag is not necessarily trans people, obviously, but the sort of anti-LGBTQ plus. The thing is, like, while, like, you know, there is a significant overlap, like, not all drag performers are necessarily LGBTQ plus either. It's just, you know, LGBTQ plus adjacent, really. But either way, like, it's all like, yeah, it's like this freaking freak out, and there's a lot of people who are going to be put in danger over it because of this weird culture war that people are having. That's why there's a lot of, like, you know, innocent people that need to be helped out of the country. Like, a few years ago, I bought an alternate history book by an Islamophobic writer. I probably shouldn't have done that, and I'll argue with a Middle Eastern person who will get mad at me for it. Okay, cool. I mean, maybe you didn't know that at the time, or you've changed as a person between then and there. Like, I don't know. But yeah, like, if somebody got mad at me, if someone get mad about that, yeah, it's fair. Why weren't people calling for boycotts when the Fantastic Beasts movies were coming out? I mean, there was for the most recent one, but that had more to do with Johnny Depp, I think. But I think that it wasn't, like, J.K. Rowling was highly suspected to be a transphobe, but was never confirmed to be one until, I think, like, a couple years ago. I think. Bo pretends he's a coyote who smuggled people across the border, but he really way overcharged them for visa. Oh, jeez. Oh, God. What do you think about inner refugees with the concept of state-to-state extradition requests on the U.S. or potential for conflict due to it? Yeah, I mean, the sort of banning of abortion in a lot of states and giving it like a sort of like making it like a high crime is definitely like begging to cause a lot of interstate issues like that. But yeah, trust me, I think people have pointed out, like the anti-drag, anti-trans hysteria that's happening in America right now. Keep in mind that they're just going for that because, like, it's the same people who went after gay marriage about 10 years ago, but they will always go after what they think is the most socially acceptable way to discriminate against the people they hate. So, you know, now that it's like, it's socially acceptable to hate trans people at the moment, once that gets like, you know, like once they tap away at that and, you know, once they get successful with that, they, like, don't think they won't go for all of the things that are on their wish list on a long enough time scale. Women's, like, you know, like gay rights, women's ability to vote. Who knows? they've definitely been like, trying to roll back things that are about, desegregation. Who knows what end they would go to roll back people's rights. It's all a big project to do the one big thing. I'll just say if David Duke released a video game, I'd feel assumed everyone who played it was racist. Yeah. If David Duke released like David Duke Pro Skater 2K15, I would say that you should not play that. And if you are playing David Duke Pro Skater 2K15 on Twitch and people give you shit for it, I would have a low amount of sympathy for your crocodile tears over being harassed for playing David Duke Pro Skater 2K15. Trans people have known that J.K. Rowling is bad for a while, yes. It just hadn't become, like, she hadn't been public about it until I think it was 2017 that she became public about it. I can't remember the actual time right now, but... There is a sniper game where you can kill Hitler. Sweet. Killing Hitler is a fun and good activity for the whole family. No ethical quandaries there. Interview with a log cabin Republican said he got called a pedophile multiple times at last year's CPAC. Yeah. Does seem that... What's it called? It's very much a, I didn't think the tigers would eat my face, says voter of the Tigers Eating My Face party. Or Tigers Eating People's Faces party. Wolfenstein 3D is the best Wolfenstein because you can kill Hitler. I'm inclined to agree with that. I feel like video games should, like, instead of having ratings about how good they are as games, you can tell how good a game is with how many Hitlers you get to kill. Or, yeah. So, like, the best video game of all time would be one where it's just a Doom clone where you are there with a chain gun and all you just do is mow down Adolf Hitlers. And that would be the best video game ever made. Why would anyone want to play a different game at that point? That's all games need to be. You just sit there and just shoot, like, a wave after wave of Hitlers. Okay, so the next question I got has to do with Spartacus, which I feel like I'm going to need Mia for, so... let's see. I feel like I don't really have any questions left that I can answer in the amount of time I have. What if you're bad at FPS? Then it can have a mode where you just push, like, what's it called? You don't even have to move. Like, they can have a mode where you don't even have to push a button. Like, actually, it would even be a better game if you had to, like, mow down. What you would just do is hold down the space bar and you would just spray bullets and you would just move and sort of like a what's it called? Like a sprinkler, where you're just mowing down wave after wave after wave of Hitlers. Yeah, VATS, but for Hitlers. The best game ever made. It's just like what's it called? That's why Inglourious Basterds is such a good movie, because they kill Hitler. What other thing would you want, right? What other point is there for video games than to kill as many Hitlers as you possibly can in the shortest amount of time possible, right? Wait, there's discourse around the train derailment? How can... What? Are there people who are pro-train derailment? Why are people still log cabin Republicans in 2023? Because money. People like money. There are people like Peter Thiel who are, you know, gay but also fascist. People have forgotten. I love turn-based strategy. I love turn-based games in general. I'm not very good at games that require me being fast anymore. I'm in my mid-30s now. I have no time for that. It has to be turn-based or else... I'm in my mid-30s and I have a baby who at any time will make me have to get up from doing things. If I have to play anything that's not turn-based, it's gonna kill me. Closest thing I can do is pausable real-time at this point. The fascists won't spare the gay that agrees with them. Yeah. Be good if they actually figured that out at some point. They don't realize that, what's it called? They don't realize that if you have a seat at the table, it doesn't really matter if you're on the menu. All right, let's see if I can raid Kira chats. I think that would be... I feel like she turned it off at some point, but let's see if we can. Anyways, guys, this has been a great stream. I really have to go to the bathroom, and it is, 1:59. I got a video to edit, so let's see if I can raid Kira chats. But yeah. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, be good, and I'll see you guys next week.